I'm driving right now. Can you wait?
I called my husband Jarvis, trying to hold back my anger. Jarvis answered the phone with a slightly irritated tone. I pretended to be clueless and started talking in a deliberately cheerful voice.
Driving? But the car is right here. What are you talking about? Oh, are you in this luxurious hotel by any chance? What? What are you talking about? Just so you know, your parents are coming over soon, so be ready.
After saying that, I hung up the phone without waiting for a reply. My name is Roberta. Ever since our daughter Stephanie was born, I've been a housewife. Jarvis and I, married for 10 years, never really fought and lived happily with our daughter. Jarvis is a salesman and often traveled out of state for work. But every time he went on a business trip, he always brought back souvenirs for us.
I'm home, got some souvenirs.
Welcome back. What's the treat today?
Today, it's Stephanie's favorite pudding. Yay! Let's eat it right away.
Life was enjoyable like this, and I often wished for these happy moments to continue. As Stephanie reached her upper elementary years, Jarvis's business trips became more frequent, shifting from once a month to almost every 10 days. Is it normal for business trips to be this frequent? I wondered, but thought. Sales position must be busy, and being busy is good. I didn't worry too much. Jarvis seemed to get busier with work, sometimes even working during his days off.
Working on your day off?
Yeah, I have to. Sorry.
That must be hard. Stephanie will need more money as she grows, so I'm working while I can.
Jarvis always seemed reliable, never showing fatigue despite the frequent business trips. I thought he was a great father. Even though I was concerned about his frequent business trips, I continued to see Jarvis off. I had no idea things would turn out like this. Well, I'm off. I'll probably be back tomorrow night.
Take care, see you soon.
Even though it was Saturday, Jarvis said he had a business trip and left for out of state. His trips were usually overnight and returned late. What should I make for dinner tonight? As I pondered and cleaned the room, I noticed a black file on the living room table. This file, usually used by Jarvis for work, contained documents for clients.
Isn't this something he'd be in trouble if he forgot?
I thought and immediately called Jarvis. But it seemed he didn't notice the call, and he didn't answer. I sent messages in a rush, but got no reply.
If he doesn't have this for sales, won't that be a problem?
I waited anxiously for Jarvis to get in touch, but it took him 5 hours to finally call back. Jarvis usually got pretty upset when he made a mistake, but he sounded oddly cheerful on the phone.
Sorry, I was so busy with work I didn't notice. Were you okay without the file?
Yeah, I managed. Luckily, the guy I was with had the documents. When Jarvis said this with a laugh, I felt a sense of discomfort. Huh?
Weren't you supposed to go alone this time?
Oh, suddenly, there was someone who came along. He's a newbie, so we decided to take him to introduce him to the client. You know, the boss sprung it on me out of the blue. It's a bit of a hassle.
I see, that must have been tough. Good job.
At this point, I felt something was off, but I didn't suspect Jarvis of anything shady. The next day, Jarvis returned home past 10 p.m. He usually came home after his business trips these days.
I'm home, totally exhausted. Welcome back, you'll eat dinner, right?
Oh, I already ate.
I'm just gonna shower and go to bed.
After handing me his laundry, Jarvis headed straight to the shower. While putting the clothes in the washing machine, I noticed a long, light-colored hair on Jarvis's shirt. It's longer than mine or Stephanie's. A woman's hair. My heart raced, facing something I'd never encountered before. A woman's hair is on a shirt he wore back from a business trip. In dramas or cartoons, such things often lead to the discovery of infidelity, but I thought that couldn't be the case. Jarvis had been on a business trip, and perhaps he was taken to a bar for business socializing. Being taken to a bar by clients is common. Though less frequent now, Jarvis used to often go out for drinks as part of his job in sales. It seemed that maintaining relationships is an important part of sales. And Jarvis, being so earnest, wouldn't cheat. I believed. Still feeling unsettled, I spoke to Jarvis while he was in the shower.
There's a long hair on your shirt.
Jarvis responded calmly. Ah, probably from the hotel. It was a bit old and not well maintained. Maybe it's from a previous guest? Really? That dirty, huh? Jarvis's unflustered response reassured me. If he had something to hide, he would have been more panicked. Seeing Jarvis so normal, I thought he must be fine. Looking back, I regret not being more suspicious then. It could have prevented what happened later. After his shower, Jarvis went to the bedroom as usual, showing no signs of change. However, the next day, I discovered something unbelievable. As I was about to throw out the trash in the laundry room, I noticed something fall from the trash can.
What's this?
Picking it up, I realized it was a restaurant receipt. The unfamiliar restaurant name caught my eye, and I noticed the date was from 2 days ago. That is the date Jarvis was on a business trip, which made me feel strange. The receipt was for 2 people, which made it clear he went there with someone.
A meal with a client, maybe.
That's what I thought, but then I realized something. If it was a business meal, it would be expensed, and he'd need to keep the receipt according to company policy. A mere receipt, thrown away as trash, didn't seem like a business meal.
Then who was he with?
I pondered, staring at the receipt, noticing the time was marked as 10 p.m.
Could Jarvis really be having a dinner with a client after 10 p.m.?
The more I thought about it, the deeper my suspicions grew. Until yesterday, I was convinced of this. Jarvis couldn't possibly be cheating. But putting all the recent events together, I couldn't help but find it suspicious.
Could he be cheating?
For the first time, I began to think like that. Once I started doubting, I wanted to investigate thoroughly. So I decided to hire a detective to look into Jarvis. His frequent business trips seemed dubious, and the woman's hair on his shirt, and him dining late with someone, all bothered me. After hiring the detective, I was told it would take 2 weeks to get the results. Coincidentally, Jarvis had another business trip scheduled in a few days. I informed the detective and left their office. What if all these business trips were lies to meet his mistress? While talking with the detective, I couldn't help but worry.
Okay, I'm off then.
Safe travels. A few days later, Jarvis left for his trip as usual. Since I confronted him about the hair, Jarvis had started locking his mobile phone. He was never concerned about his phone before, but now he even took it to the bathroom. It only increased my suspicions. Is he cheating on me after all? The thought made me both dread and eagerly await the detective's findings. 2 weeks later, when the results were due, I went to the detective's office. The result revealed that Jarvis was having an affair. He was cheating with a woman around his age. Just as I had suspected, he was meeting her under the guise of business trips. It seemed that his increased trips were all for the affair, starting from when it began to increase. The detective provided several photos as evidence. Seeing those photos, I nearly screamed. The woman was my friend Esty. I met her at Stephanie's preschool and we got close due to similar pickup times. We'd visited each other's homes, but I rarely saw Jarvis and Esty talking. Esty moved out of the school district when her child started elementary school due to her husband's job. We lost touch after she moved. Not connecting on social media, so I had no idea what she was doing, but she was close with my husband. The photos showed Esty and Jarvis entering a hotel arm in arm, chatting happily at a cafe, and walking hand in hand in a park, all undeniable evidence of their affair. I was shocked to discover that Jarvis, whom I trusted, was cheating with my friend. The fact that he had an affair with my friend and then acted as if nothing happened around our family was unbelievable. Knowing this truth, I felt it was impossible to continue living with him as a family. The word divorce floated in my mind. Even after returning from the detective's office, I kept thinking about what to do for my family. While I considered divorce, Thinking of Stephanie made it hard to decide what was best. Days passed without finding an answer. When I was thinking about weekend plans on Friday, Jarvis made a suggestion. Got any plans for tomorrow? Tomorrow? No, why? Well, my parents want to take Stephanie somewhere. Is it okay if she stays overnight? I'll take her, so you can relax, Roberta. Honestly, I appreciated the offer. I didn't want to be with Jarvis, who I just discovered was cheating, and I planned to use the free time to look for a lawyer. Sure. Say hi to your parents for me. So, Jarvis and Stephanie left for his parents' house, and I stayed home to search for a lawyer. The next day, right after breakfast, Jarvis and Stephanie left.
Mom, we're off. Take care, see you later.
After seeing them off, I started searching online for a lawyer experienced in divorce mediation. Reading user reviews, I checked out law firms with good reputations. While researching, I was also messaging Stephanie. An hour had passed since they left. Have you arrived yet? Not yet. Waiting for Dad. Where did Dad go? Don't know. He told me to wait, so I'm reading a book. Finding it odd, I checked Stephanie's mobile phone GPS. Incredibly, it was pointing to a bustling downtown area, completely opposite from his parents' place. Further inspection showed the car parked at a luxury hotel. The GPS location remained static. Could he have left Stephanie in the car and gone into the hotel? I had a bad feeling and immediately called his parents. Hi. Hi, Sharon. It's Roberta. Are Jarvis and Stephanie there? No, they haven't come. We were out visiting graves today. Were they coming over? If they're not there, it's fine. I'll call back later. Shocked by the words of my mother-in-law Sharon, I managed to end the call. Then I called Stephanie, who sounded bored. Dad's not back yet, and I'm bored.
Sorry, honey. Mom's coming to pick you up. Okay. What about Dad?
I'll contact Dad too, don't worry. After assuring Stephanie, I called back his parents. This time my father-in-law Gabe answered. I quickly explained the situation. When I told them Jarvis was cheating and had left Stephanie in the car while at a hotel, they were furious.
What is he thinking, dragging Stephanie into this?
I'm heading to the hotel now. Can you pick up Stephanie?
Sure, we're on our way.
I gave them the hotel's location and left home with the evidence from the detective. The luxury hotel where Jarvis was a 30-minute drive. Arriving at the parking lot, I saw Stephanie innocently waving at me. Seeing her, my anger towards Jarvis grew.
I'm so tired of waiting.
Sorry, let's go home first. Stephanie seemed unaware of the situation, which was a small relief. About 10 minutes later, his parents arrived. After handing Stephanie over to them, I decided to wait for Jarvis.
Okay, Stephanie, let's go eat parfait with Grandma and Grandpa.
Sharon, trying to keep Stephanie from sensing the adults' tense atmosphere, spoke cheerfully. After seeing the in-laws off, I called Jarvis. I'm sure he is in the middle of a very exciting time, so he would surely be irritated if I phoned him. Following a long ring, Jarvis answered annoyingly as I expected.
What now? I'm driving. Can you wait? Driving? But the car's here. What are you talking about? Oh, are you in this luxurious hotel by any chance? What? What are you talking about? Just so you know, your parents are coming here, so be prepared.
Of course, this was a lie. I thought that if I told him his parents were coming, he would surely panic. With that thought, I unilaterally ended the call. As I anticipated, Jarvis hurried out of the hotel within 5 minutes. Obviously having dressed in haste, his shirt buttons were mismatched. Esty, who came out with him, sped off in her car upon seeing me. I had no intention of letting her get away easily. I had planned to give Esty a piece of my mind later on.
Huh? Why are you here? Where's Stephanie? What are you doing, Jarvis? Leaving our daughter in the parking lot for an affair? Unbelievable!
Jarvis, who rarely saw me angry, shrank back. But leaving our daughter alone in a car for an affair, that was unforgivable. I thought it was unbelievable to bring her to a hotel parking lot in the first place.
It's not what you think!
His feeble excuses only exasperated me more.
What do you mean, not what I think? Helping her with parenting. That's all. No affair, just talking in the lobby.
As Jarvis stammered, I pulled out an envelope from my bag.
No affair? Then what's this?
I showed him the photos from the detective. Seeing them, Jarvis collapsed to his knees. He seemed to have given up making excuses.
We're going to your parents' house to talk.
I left the parking lot first. Arriving at the in-laws' house, Stephanie had already fallen asleep, maybe because she was tired. No wonder she waited in the car for so long. The sight of her only fueled my anger towards Jarvis. An hour after I arrived, Jarvis showed up. To be so late would indicate that he didn't want to come home. Gabe was waiting, arms crossed, at the entrance. Upon Jarvis's arrival, Gabe lashed out loudly.
What have you done? Say something!
Let's go inside, Sharon suggested, guiding us in. The atmosphere inside was so heavy. Gabe broke the silence.
What were you doing at that hotel?
I was having an affair.
Who with?
A mother of Stephanie's kindergarten friend. Gabe sighed heavily. Then he said quietly,
You're no longer welcome in this house. Don't come back. What do you want to do, Roberta?
Asked by Gabe, I voiced what I had been considering.
I'm thinking of divorce. I won't even let Stephanie see him anymore.
Until yesterday, I was uncertain about divorce, but today's events were decisive. I didn't need a husband who couldn't consider our daughter. That's what I decided.
Divorce? No, not that. You have no right to say anything.
Gabe shouted, silencing Jarvis again. My anger erupted too.
Don't want a divorce? Speak for yourself. Lying about business trips to cheat. I always thought it was odd, going on trips every week.
You were lying like that?
Yes. I went to a detective agency, and they found this evidence.
I showed the in-laws the photos the detective had given me. They sighed heavily, unable to say anything. Jarvis, cornered, started crying. His weeping infuriated me more, and I yelled,
Why are you crying? I'm the one who should be crying.
Jarvis stayed silent, fighting back tears. I took out the divorce papers I had prepared and had him fill them out on the spot. We agreed on the terms for the divorce settlement. I'll file these tomorrow. Can you pack your things and leave? Understood. Jarvis left to collect his belongings. We stayed with the in-laws for a few days, just to be safe. They were concerned about Stephanie and me. Roberta, if Jarvis stops paying, we'll cover the divorce settlement. I can't accept that. It's fine. Jarvis has caused enough trouble. Will you accept it? Thank you. With the in-laws' help, we received the entire divorce settlement up front. It was a relief for me, transitioning to a single-parent household. Jarvis moved out, leaving Stephanie and me to our new life. We received a substantial divorce settlement from Jarvis and Esty, bringing a sense of closure. If anything happens, we can rely on my parents, and the in-laws are willing to help too. Although I no longer have a relationship with Jarvis, I still have a relationship with my in-laws and often visit them. Stephanie loves her grandparents and frequently wants to stay over. I found out later that Esty was infamous among friends for pursuing married men. She has had a number of troubles in the past. Because of my divorce settlement claim, her husband found out about her affair with Jarvis and they ended up divorcing too. Jarvis got involved with a bar staff and apparently is spending a lot of money there. Stephanie and I are enjoying our freedom, living happily as a duo.
Are you sure it's okay to accept this?
I asked the woman in front of me. She responded and nodded, with a charming smile, seemingly filled with happiness.
That made sense. She had submitted a birth certificate.
Although probably she had gone through a tough childbirth, this young woman seemed to savor the joy of a new family and resolve of motherhood in her heart. I accepted the birth certificate because I am a civil servant for working here. I carefully checked the document if there are any errors.
I paid special attention to the father's section, but she didn't change her expression and waited patiently for my process.
Occasionally, she talked to the man standing next to her about a gift.
The man who was talked by the woman didn't even nod properly. Or perhaps he couldn't.
He was pale, trembling, and avoiding my gaze as if trying to escape.
I thought to myself, that makes sense too. Because this pathetic, trembling man is my husband.
I am Sarah, a housewife who has been working in the health bureau for 10 years. I didn't have children, but I had a modest wedding with David, who works in a trading company, and thought we would continue to live peacefully, quietly together.
That's what I believed. I started to sense something odd about my husband David after he passed his promotion exam.
His success would lead to a significant career leap at a young age, so David had been studied hard at home, and I supported him tirelessly while working.
My efforts paid off, and I was truly happy when the results came.
He was seen as a promising person among his peers. He started going to high-end clubs almost every week. It was for introducing clients, as told by his boss.
As David, it must have been the most attention-grabbing period of his life. Maybe he misunderstood something. When he returned from those glamorous and flashy places, the meals I cooked seemed too simple and poor to him, and he gradually started to look down on me.
Cheap chicken again?
My salary gonna be increased, so we could afford a bit more luxury.
At first, he would say like that, but gradually his words became harsher and turned into criticism directed at me.
Switch to better meat. The meat was good on the celebration day, wasn't it? But I'm scared of buying expensive meat on regular days if I would be a mess it up.
Haha. Your cooking wasn't bad.
It kind of feels like you're indirectly saying I don't earn enough, which I don't like.
Of course, I never had such intentions.
I was living a normal life, and thinking that we needed to tighten our budget, especially when the salary increased.
One day, David finally said,
I can't even tell to the people what I'm eating like this. And he stopped eating my cooking.
When he got promoted, he used to say,
It's thanks to you, Sarah. I'm lucky to have such a wonderful wife. But now he had changed so much. Sarah, aren't you motivated for doing household chores?
Huh? What do you mean? I'm doing everything normally.
You haven't watered the plants outside. Weeds are growing, too. And I told you to wash the car, right? When are you planning to do it? You keep saying you're busy, but is your job at the health bureau demanding really? I always tried not to let dirty dishes or laundry pile up, but I just didn't have the time for the balcony plants. I couldn't get to weeding on weekdays, and washing the car took even more time. Plus, only David used the car, so it seemed unfair to leave it to me. David's one-sided and condescending remarks increased day by day.
He forcefully linked the household chores to my job and even started to mock the fact that I worked at the health bureau.
I remembered the days I desperately took the civil service exam and managed to suppress my frustration somehow. If you're busy, I'll eat out for a while. You don't have to do the household chores. Next week is our wedding anniversary. Do you remember the restaurant you used to book every year?
I had marked it clearly on the calendar. This restaurant was popular, slightly expensive, reservation only, which we had been going to since before our marriage. The old David would have booked it 6 months in advance.
Had that changed too?
When I timidly asked, David suddenly brightened up.
But the following words were shocking, so intense, I felt like my heart would shatter.
Ah, that place? Don't worry about it. I've reserved a seat.
But on that day, I just can't adjust my schedule with a client. And they told me to set up a meeting, so I thought it was a good place to introduce them.
Introduce?
What do you mean? I mean, I'm using the reservation for a business dinner.
You get it, right? There's no point in forcibly celebrating on that day. It's my reservation, so it should be fine. David said it so casually. I was shocked but felt like I couldn't show my tears, so I just held them back. That's not what I wanted to ask. I was astounded by David's behavior. I didn't know how to put my feelings into words and faltered. He looked at me with annoyance. If you focused on the housework instead of your job at the health bureau, I'd be more motivated to come home and work hard. But if you can't even manage that, what's the point of working? Why don't you just quit? It was true that I had been getting home late recently due to helping other departments. I had no idea if David really wanted me to quit because of my supposedly inadequate housework, but he seems to just wanted to assert dominance and lash out at me. Although my job was busy and the income was stable. It was important and I took pride in it. Despite David's harsh words, I had no intention of quitting. A few weeks later, I was working as usual. The health bureau's reception gets very crowded during campaigns and events. Although it wasn't my department, I helped out by speaking to visitors and conveying their concerns to the staff. Just then, a couple approached me, and the woman handed over a document cheerfully. Hello, we've come to submit a birth notification for our child. It wasn't my department, so I couldn't accept it. I was about to tell the woman I'd check with the staff, then I saw the man next to her. And I was so shocked that I nearly lost my breath. It was David, my supposed husband. Our eyes met, and he looked just as surprised and then awkward. Could you check if there's anything wrong with this form? The woman, unaware of the situation, was holding out the form and waiting for me. David's name was written in the father's section of the birth notification. Congratulations. I'll have a check with our staff, please wait a moment. I guided them calmly. I went back to check the counter and checked with the staff, but they were all busy. Additionally, they were so occupied. And asked me to check if the necessary fields were correctly filled, even though they couldn't process it. My mind was in turmoil. Should I have confronted David then and there? Did she know I was his wife when she approached me? I was just helping out with guidance today. It must have been a mere coincidence that I encountered them. Thank you for waiting. I'll check for any errors now. Yes, please. I returned to them, maintaining my composure and acting as just a staff member. I guided them to a seat to review their submission. I suddenly realized that the child's birth date was our wedding anniversary, and a pang of pain shot through my heart. I pressed my nails against my wrist under the counter to suppress my voice. The woman's name seemed Emma. She's 24, over 10 years younger than David. She appeared like a gentle lady, with a calm demeanor. She was lightly but neatly made up, not looking at all like someone who had just given birth. Nor did she seem like the type to brazenly have an affair with a married man and face his wife. Perhaps her lack of reaction was because she didn't know about me. It might take some time as we don't want any mistakes. That's fine. David took the day off, and my parents are looking after my baby in the car. She answered with a smile. She talked about how much she loved her child, and described how the baby was small and birthed healthy. Obviously, David, sitting next to her, couldn't say anything and avoided eye contact with an awkward expression. He must have found my composed demeanor puzzling. David had been staying away from home, and I had suspected he might have an affair. But I never imagined he had fathered a child, so I took a deep breath to hide my realization. If you'd like, please call your parents over. The baby would feel more secure with mom nearby. Thank you, I was feeling a bit anxious. I'll do that. Following my suggestion, she started using her mobile phone. David began to panic, but I pretended to check the form and stepped back to the counter. I prepared the necessary documents and returned with 2 papers. The couple looked in surprise. Especially Emma, who was visibly shocked. She stared at the unfolded paper, her face turning pale and starting to tremble. You haven't submitted a marriage registration, have you? We did submit a marriage registration. We are married. No, that's impossible. On top of the birth notification they had submitted. I placed an unfilled marriage certificate and a divorce form with my name already filled in. I pointed to the blank space for David's on the divorce form.
Could you please fill this in, David? To start a new marital relationship, you first need to get divorced me, right?
It seemed they finally understood. Emma glared at me and then turned a frightening face toward the man next to her. I also looked at David, who had turned pale.
What kind of nerve do you have, submitting the birth notification of a child with your mistress at your wife's counter?
Before David couldn't respond to my strong questioning, Emma stood up abruptly, knocking over her chair with a loud noise. She grabbed at David with a shrill voice.
You deceived me? You said you were single, right? That we would marry because I was pregnant. David!
Of course, Emma had no idea he was already married. She had quickly seen through David's cheating personality and decided to have a child to keep him tied down. Not knowing he was already married. David, recently promoted and busy, had told his colleagues.
And he told his clients and colleagues that the fertility treatments had been undergoing. Despite he had no intention of divorcing me, it would ruin everything.
So David had made up various excuses for not submitting the marriage certificate. I have work this weekend, let's skip it, or next time is Emma's dad's birthday, let's prioritize that. While he was making these excuses, Emma's morning sickness was worsened and leading to hospitalization. As she was in and out of the hospital, submitting the marriage certificate became the least of their worries. That's why Emma completely believed David's claim that he had already submitted the marriage certificate. There are many things to do after getting married. If one thinks about it calmly, like changing the name on your driver's license and bank accounts. But Emma, exhausted from her frequent illnesses and the major task of her first childbirth, hadn't considered these things. Her anger was exploded, and her face turning red with fury.
Wait! What about the money I saved for the wedding? Did you spend it with this person? What? David, you borrowed money too?
I was shocked by Emma's question and hurriedly looked at David.
Don't stay silent, explain! We have a child, you know? You are always so talkative. What about the money? Are you in debt to her? What did you use it for?
David remained silent, not uttering a single word. It appeared that Emma had lent him a significant amount of money.
Of course, none of it had come into our household, and there was no sign that David had been living beyond his salary.
Emma was ignoring the other staff trying to stop her, and shook David for demanding an explanation and repayment. I didn't intervene, because I was considering it was also my concern. My feelings for David had already detached completely.
All right, I get it. You want a divorce, right? Then I'll do it right here, right now. I don't need you anyway. Are you satisfied now?
David, finally enraged and turned his face to red, hastily began to fill out the divorce form.
And Emma, you want your money back, right? You approached me when I started to succeed just because you're the daughter of an executive.
His attack then turned towards Emma, who had been crying silently.
How could he say such things to her, especially after she had borne his child? Just as I thought I should intervene.
David caught his breath, and he was staring intently behind her. I turned to look and saw there, a middle-aged couple with grim expressions was standing at the entrance of the health bureau. The woman was holding a baby and not moving, while the man, who was wearing high-end clothes, approached us with long strides. He seemed to be Emma's father. Emma was crying and rushed to the man who had just arrived. Likely they are her parents whom I had earlier suggested she call. Is what I just heard true? The man's low voice interrogated David, who visibly paled. I heard later that David and Emma had met at a dinner with clients. She was assisting her father, a senior executive, in a secretarial role. David was very taken with Emma's innocence, who had just graduated from college.
You seduced my daughter in a business associate and fathered a child, while being married to another woman? Is that true? I didn't invite you to the dinner to make Emma got to be this.
David was scolded with such fierce anger that he stumbled off his chair and fell to the floor.
Where did the money go that I prepared for the wedding expenses?
David, he was forgetting his defiance, and began to tear up and apologized profusely.
The disappearance of the wedding expenses turns out to be the compensation paid to David, another affair partner.
He was involved with a married woman, but they were quickly discovered, then it led to her divorce. The compensation demanded by the husband was paid off with this money. David fancied young and obedient Emma and knew her family was wealthy, so he thought everything could be managed with their money if a child was involved.
His plan was to settle the affair's compensation and somehow deal with divorcing me, then all that would be left would be a wealthy family-in-law and a loving wife and child. Such a deceitful scheme, trampling over others, could never succeed. I will consult a lawyer about this case of marriage fraud. I'll sue you, and of course, I'll report this to your company. You deceived my daughter. Be prepared. No, please.
Emma's father declared his intention to sue and demand action to David's company. David kept apologizing while crying, but Emma's father left quickly with her and the child. David tried to defend himself, but was restrained by the security guards who arrived due to the commotion, and eventually the police were called.
The filled-out divorce form was left in my hand.
Soon after, David's workplace was informed, and they took swift action. His recent promotion, despite the time elapsed, was revoked, and he was demoted due to his dishonest and problematic behavior. His bad reputation was spread, and endangering several business relationships, then putting his company at risk. David was quickly fired and became unemployed.
The divorce was finalized, and I was free from David.
The house was in his name, so I moved to a distant apartment to avoid overlapping living areas. My family was worried, but as David's misdeeds became known, I received their sympathy and support. Faced with compensations to me, his affair partner, Emma, child support, and a fraud lawsuit, and with his company demanding damages, David quickly fell into financial hardship.
Unbelievably, he thought of reconciling with me and stormed into the health bureau, trying to win me back. I was called out for causing a commotion at the service counter. Probably because I'm the one most likely to listen.
But that was back when I was married. Now, I'm divorced.
He's a complete stranger to me.
Most people at my workplace were aware of the situation.
It was embarrassing, but thankfully, after I made it clear, David stopped visiting me, no matter how often he tried.
There were several discussions with Emma, too. It was worst that I kept my marriage a secret, but since I caused trouble, she offered to pay compensation. The newborn baby, with the help of both parents, is growing up healthy.
So, I was not wanting to disrupt their newfound peace. I declined the money. I told Emma it's far better to use the money for the child's sake, and we parted ways. David couldn't find a new job ever.
He looked down on the health department's work, thinking applying for welfare would be easy, but he didn't know about the strict scrutiny for payments. Immediately, his family found out about his misdeeds when they were contacted. His parents, being strict but fair, sent David back home. He ended up doing hard labor as a live-in worker. My transfer to another branch was officially decided because of the commotion caused by David's resentful attacks. It's far enough that the staff there doesn't know about the trouble.
It seemed I'd be able to work quietly, and I was being warmly supported and sent off by everyone around me. David would have mocked it as a demotion if he were here.
However, my diligent work has been appreciated.
It's even better conditions than before. The new life is challenging, but I got a fulfilling job.
Finally, a peaceful life without problems is starting.
It's unthinkable to ask for food money. Taking money from your family is shameful, you should realize that.
As my son's wife shouted, glaring at my husband and me, I thought to myself that what's truly unthinkable is her behavior. Unthinkable indeed, you fool. People say your daughter-in-law is a stranger, and it couldn't be more true. Such a brazen woman, she's not part of my family. The one who silenced my daughter-in-law was a single remark from our beloved grandchild. I am Lily, a 65-year-old housewife. I've been married to my husband Thomas for 40 years. We have 2 sons, both of them have their own families now. My eldest son, Michael, lives nearby. He has an 8-year-old daughter, but we rarely see her due to her busy school schedule. However, the last person you want to see is often the one who shows up uninvited. Lily, do you have anything you don't need? I'll take it off your hands. The loud one at the front door is Michael's wife, Emma. I've disliked her ever since my son married her. Looking back, she was always a bit off. She boldly asked about my husband's salary and our savings. Emma, you shouldn't ask such things, even to family. It can upset people. I once said to her, in a lecturing tone. Eh? Why not? We're family. My parents tell me everything. Oh, by the way, they said they hardly have any savings. Seeing her laugh, I felt drained. Later, my younger son's wife said, Lily, I need to talk to you about my sister-in-law. The content was unbelievable. At that time, she was struggling to conceive and was undergoing treatment. Why don't you have kids? You should have them while you're young. It gets harder as you get older. Such meddling made her neurotic. Even when Michael scolded his wife, she showed no remorse. I was just giving advice as a mother, she defiantly claimed. But after successful treatment, a grandson was born to my younger son. Then, this time, Emma sent a message. Just because you had a boy doesn't mean he's the heir, right? My daughter is the first grandchild and the eldest son Michael's child. To the second son's wife soon after giving birth. This incident caused my younger son's family to move away, reducing our meetings to a few times a year. Children grow up watching their parents, and looking at Emma's parents, it might not be entirely false. My husband sighed deeply. Emma's parents, living in the countryside, were equally strange. Every year at Thanksgiving, we send gifts to those who've been kind to us, including Emma's parents. One year, I received a phone call from Emma's parents. Hello? I was taken aback. So, you know, the assortment of sweets and towels is fine, but we were thinking meat would be better, right? What is she talking about? It's the thought that counts, and besides, we've never received a Thanksgiving gift from Emma's parents. Yet, they had the audacity to say such things. I was hesitant, but when I told Michael about the call, he immediately scolded his wife. I should have told you what they like. Sorry. Next year, please send them their favorite things. I was stunned by her audacious response. Emma, that's not the point. We sent those gifts with love, but both my husband and I felt very offended. We never receive anything from your parents, so we'll refrain next year. We don't want to impose, I said and abruptly hung up the phone. Emma's causing friction in our family. She's odd, we should keep our distance. But contrary to my wishes, when my granddaughter Aria started elementary school, Michael's family moved close to our house. This house will be well taken care of by our family. Lily, you and your husband can comfortably move into a home for the elderly. When she said this with a smile, both my husband and I were speechless. In essence, she meant they wouldn't care for us but would take the house. We didn't expect care from them, especially not from Emma. But living nearby meant we'd frequent use the same supermarket. When I go shopping, there's an 80% chance I run into Emma. Oh? Lily, are you shopping too? What a coincidence, so am I. Emma says this, but I'm not a fool either. She must have seen me leaving our apartment for the supermarket. And her goal was clear, just one thing. These, I saw on TV. They were delicious. This is also recommended. And this too. She would unceremoniously add items to my shopping cart. I live with just my husband, we can't eat all of these. Even I put things back, she'd quickly return them to my cart, saying, It's fine, I'll take them, don't worry about it. Fine for what? I thought, but with neighbors and friends working at the supermarket, I couldn't raise my voice. After I paid, she brazenly opened the packages as if they were her share and stuffed them into plastic bags, then into her own shopping bags. Even with a 10-pack of eggs, she'd say, "You can't eat all these, right? I'll take some." And open the pack herself. That finally made me angry. "I use eggs every day, it's okay. Please give them back. And this meat too, I'll freeze any leftovers." When I said this, Michael and Arya both love eggs. I want them to eat a lot. And meat too. But, you know, Michael's salary has been cut recently. She showed a visibly downcast appearance. Looking at her shopping bag, it was mostly discounted items. Because of her loud voice, other shoppers looked at us strangely. On a day I didn't encounter her at the supermarket, a neighbor working there stopped me to say, "Can't you do something about your son's wife? Asking for more discounts, not listening when we say we don't put sale stickers on items in the cart." Her embarrassing behavior made me feel like my face was on fire. Give me a break. My head's going to explode. Most of my conversations with my eldest son Michael became about his wife. That weekend, Michael and his unusually serious-faced wife Emma came over. As soon as she entered the room, "Lily, I got too comfortable thinking we're family. I'm sorry for the trouble at the supermarket. I'll refrain from such embarrassing behavior from now on." Is this really the same woman? She seemed genuinely remorseful. I later learned from my son that they had a serious fight. He threatened divorce if there wasn't an improvement, which seemingly changed her attitude. Life was peaceful for a while. But people don't change that easily. After that, I felt awkward using the supermarket, so I started ordering groceries online. Then, my son's wife began bringing my granddaughter Arya to visit regularly. "Grandma, I drew this." She showed us a well-drawn picture. "Oh my. Arya, your colored pencils are quite short," I remarked. I want to buy her new pencils, but things are tough. "Sorry, Arya," Emma interjected. Seeing this, my husband took out his wallet. "Here, buy Arya some new pencils with this," and gave her a small amount of money. She continued visiting, saying Arya's shoes were too small or she needed new clothes, always appealing to us. Sometimes she'd boldly enter our kitchen and ask, "Do you have anything you don't need?" Hey, is Michael's company really struggling that much? And if life is so hard, why doesn't Emma work? She's been a housewife since marriage, at home during the day. My daughter-in-law, Emma, has been a housewife ever since she got married, and seemed to be at home during the day. If she could use that time for part-time, her life would be a little easier. My husband and I often discussed this. That's the point. Then, out of the blue, my eldest son's family came over. "We're thinking of moving in here." A completely unexpected proposition. My husband and I exchanged glances. "Sorry to spring this on you, Dad, Mom." Emma suddenly started insisting on living together. "See, you got your way. Let's go home." My son tried to take her home, but she stubbornly refused, and it was getting nowhere. My husband, having had enough, said, "If you're that insistent, we won't ask for rent. But you'll have to split the food costs with us. We're living on a pension, after all." Then, she stopped in her tracks. "It's unthinkable to ask for food money. Taking money from your family is shameful, you should realize that." She came back with an outrageous response. "Aren't you the one who should be embarrassed?" And then, "If that's how you feel, then we are done as of today. And of course, I'll never let you see Arya again." I watched her fury in silence. Thinking back, ever since she came into our lives, I've never had a day of peace. I've tolerated her because she's my eldest son's choice, but now I've reached my limit. I'll only cut ties with her alone and secretly ask Michael to let us meet our granddaughter. When I was thinking this, "Hey, what does disowning mean? Like, not seeing each other anymore? If that's the case, I want to disown Mom." Everyone was shocked by my granddaughter Arya's words. "Eh?
Arya, what are you saying?
Especially Emma, who looked astonished.
Because, Mom, do you know what my friends call you? The beggar. Sometimes they laugh at me, and I don't want to go to school. The one who's embarrassing is you.
Arya's face looked like she was about to cry. Apparently, Emma had been making begging attacks on the parents of Arya's friends too.
Besides, you buy things you like, but my clothes and shoes are old. You said you'd buy me new colored pencils, but you never do.
Hearing this, I asked,
Eh?
"What do you mean?"
We gave you money to buy Arya colored pencils, didn't we? I can't believe it, but did you use it for yourself?
My eldest son's wife made an uncomfortable face and replied,
No. I used it for living expenses. It's hard to get by on just Michael's salary.
My son immediately said,
What money? And you always say that, so I've been working hard. I've been promoted twice since we got married. How much do you need to be satisfied? Or is this about divorce? I told you, if you cause any more trouble for my family or others, there won't be a next time. Above all, you've hurt Arya. You're a failure as a mom.
With his cold words, Emma's eyes filled with tears.
But I can't help it. We were poor growing up. I couldn't have what I wanted. Now I'm an adult. I want to eat and buy what I like. What's wrong with that?
To her crying hysterically, I said,
Don't be ridiculous. Making your child suffer while satisfying your own desires is just an excuse. I have no blood relation to you, and I would have welcomed a good daughter-in-law, but honestly, I only care about Michael and Arya. A foolish woman like you, I disown you.
And with that, she was taken back home by Michael. She probably thought living in our house would save on living expenses. What a joke. We decided to take care of our granddaughter Arya for a while. Because Emma had said,
You're an ungrateful child for repaying kindness with ingratitude.
To her daughter. Thinking she is doing her child a favor just shows she is finished as a mom. Emma insisted on not divorcing, but my son ignored her and forcibly sent her back to her parents' home. Of course, we got many calls from her ridiculous parents, but we ignored them all. The divorce wasn't easy and went to mediation. But thankfully, my son got custody. That's because her arguments were terrible, all about wanting to stay a housewife and not wanting to divorce, with no thought for Arya. Also, my son hadn't told us, but he had been living a repressed life, documented in his diaries. It was also discovered that Emma had been secretly saving a lot of money in her own bank account, which worked in my son's favor regarding the distribution of property. Honestly, I didn't want to give that woman a cent. My son Michael and granddaughter Arya moved out of their apartment to live with us.
Arya, I'm so sorry for making you feel lonely with all my work. I'm really happy you want to live with me.
My son was crying with happiness. Arya looked a bit shy. I thought peaceful days were finally here, but then, a few months later, some unwelcome visitor started ringing our doorbell incessantly while my son was at work and my granddaughter at school.
What?
Looking at the monitor, I saw an unexpected figure.
What do you want? Everything's been settled, right?
Opening the door, there stood Emma, my former daughter-in-law, and her parents, faces filled with anger.
Settled? Don't be ridiculous. Why haven't you paid child support?
Emma's mom's words confused us.
Excuse me? We're raising Arya here. If Emma were to pay, maybe, but why should we?
My husband glared at the three of them, baffled. Then Emma's dad said,
Emma has no income after the divorce. For the time being, your son should be taking care of her. That's why he needs to pay child support for Emma.
Behind her parents, my ex-daughter-in-law looked at me triumphantly. We couldn't help but laugh at such ridiculous statements.
You might want to look up what child support means. How old is your daughter? All I see is a healthy adult woman over 30. Did you really pay travel expenses just to come here and say something so foolish?
Following me, my husband added, "What you're doing is extortion. Now that we're divorced, we're strangers. We won't hesitate to call the police next time. To be honest, I've never once considered you family." He then pulled out his mobile phone. Seeing this, they panicked.
Police? That's ridiculous. We're leaving.
And they left hastily, almost fleeing. Watching them go, we mused. Those parents seemed normal until the marriage, but you really can't understand people. Child support for a wife? Never heard of such a thing. That woman, crazy till the end. We laughed for a while, remembering their foolish faces. Apparently, Emma's family was struggling financially. Unbeknownst to us, they had been recipients of TANF for years, receiving it under the pretense of the dad's mental illness. However, it was revealed as fraud following an anonymous tip. They were all healthy, they should have been working. It's infuriating to think such people were getting money meant for those truly in need. They were working and paying fines for a while, but people don't change easily. They were arrested for theft a few months later. They're strangers now, but I hope they continue to struggle. As for us, we've been living peacefully as if it was all a lie. Arya has brightened up and brings friends home more often. Furthermore, my younger son's family decided to move back here for his job transfer. I've been in touch with my daughter-in-law.
Lily, please teach me cooking again. My son is thrilled that he'll get to see everyone more. And he's so excited to play with his cousin Arya after we move.
Looking back, I saw the grandchildren playing happily together, a smile naturally forming on my face. Then, 3 years after the divorce, my son Michael remarried. Her name is Elizabeth, introduced by a friend. She was mistreated by her ex-husband and his family for not being able to have children. Elizabeth is kind and gentle, getting along well with my younger son's wife. Above all, I miss my grandchild Arya very much, and we prepare meals together.
Arya shyly called me mom for the first time the other day. I thought I would never be able to be mom, so I was so happy.
Elizabeth teared up as she told me. I gently patted her back. I'm truly happy that someone as kind-hearted as you became Michael's wife and Arya's mom. Thank you, Elizabeth. Soon, my son's family will move to a new home. Not too far from here. Michael and Arya had a hard time with his ex-wife, but with Elizabeth, they'll surely have peaceful days. My husband and I are planning to start a small garden when we're alone. It seems we'll be able to spend our old age in peace. Thinking about this, I savored our current happiness. My husband is out on a shopping trip right now. When we visited our eldest son's apartment to celebrate our first grandchild's birth, the door was opened by his wife, who did not hide her annoyance and frowned as she tried to close the door. In a panic, I handed over a $3,000 gift for the celebration.
If there's anything I can help with, just say it. Things might have changed since our time, but I want to support you as much as I can.
Raising a child is very hard. I said this hoping to lighten the load for my eldest son's wife, Elizabeth, but it backfired.
Don't act all high and mighty, we're cutting ties with in-laws like you.
Elizabeth shouted and threw the gift envelope I had just handed her into the trash bin by the entrance. My husband and I were speechless at her actions. Elizabeth glared at us fiercely.
I didn't want to hear such nonsense, that's why I didn't invite you. But he invited you without asking me.
It seemed that Donald had unilaterally decided to allow our visit. Elizabeth was unforgiving and started to complain about our son.
It's unbelievable to invite people home without my consent. Donald is so useless. I made him go shopping on purpose, thinking he would let you in if he was here.
After saying this, she emphatically told us never to come again and closed the front door. Then immediately, we heard the sound of the lock. I could no longer think of my eldest son's wife, who had insulted our son and trampled over our feelings of celebration as family. Overwhelmed with irritation, we decided to cut ties with her. My name is Madison. I've been married to Jeffrey for over 30 years, and we're still close. After our marriage, we had our eldest son, Donald. 2 years later, George, our second son, was born. On holidays, my outdoorsy husband would plan hiking and camping trips for the whole family. Hiking is tiring but gives a satisfying sense of fatigue. I had a blessed life, both in my career and personal life. But life changes. Once our sons started working, Donald and George moved out for solo living one after another. I felt indescribable loneliness as the frequency of direct or even written conversations with my sons, who I used to talk to every day, decreased. Perhaps thinking of me, or maybe feeling lonely himself, my husband invited me to hiking. We hadn't been to the mountains since our sons became university students, but after this event, we often went hiking together. After a few months, we began to settle into our new life. Our sons started contacting us more frequently, and about once every 2 months, they would come home. Though life had changed from when we lived with our sons, it felt right. The loneliness faded, and my husband and I started to enjoy our life as a couple. As our sons approached the age we were when we got married, Jeffrey and I reminisced about our past and discussed their futures. We only had boys, right? I always dreamed of getting along with our sons' wives like real daughters, going to cafes and shopping together.
That would be nice. I want to take my grandkids to hiking. Gotta stay healthy and illness-free.
We shared our dreams, eagerly awaiting good news from our sons. Then, about a year later, our eldest son, now in his 4th year working as a professional, informed us he got a girlfriend. That day, my husband and I celebrated with a drink, overjoyed by the news. But since then, Donald stopped coming home. Wanting to know who his partner was and longing to see our son happy. When will you come home next? I reached out several times asking. He would reply, maybe next holiday. But it never happened. On the day, a message would come. Sorry, can't make it. And both my husband and I were disappointed again and again. He must really enjoy being with her girlfriend. I remember when Jeffrey and I first dated, I couldn't get enough of being with him. I said this to myself, convincing myself to wish happiness for Donald and his partner. And began to look forward to building a mother-daughter-like relationship with my son's wife. Half a year later, Donald finally brought his girlfriend home. They were planning to get married and came to greet us. My husband and I tried to contain our excitement, eagerly awaiting the day. But when we met Elizabeth, Donald's girlfriend, there was an indescribable atmosphere. At first, I thought she was just nervous, but her words hinted at some hostility. Elizabeth, please take good care of Donald. If you ever need anything, just let us know. Even though I said this with a smile, Elizabeth did not smile back. Instead, we'll manage on our own, she coldly replied. The mood was far from cordial, and Donald sighed. Eventually, after about an hour, the two of them left. They're just independent. That's a good thing, my husband said, trying to cheer me up. They're not children anymore. Let's just watch over them. Yes, you're right. They'll have to live their lives together, after all. Disappointed, I decided to step back and support them from afar. After discussing with my husband, we decided to give them $10,000 as a wedding gift. When we made the deposit, Donald called to thank us. Thanks for the money. We'll use it for the wedding. Is the wedding planning going smoothly? Elizabeth, would she like to wear my wedding dress? I had bought a wedding dress for my own wedding. Though I'd hoped to pass it on to a daughter, I thought it would be nice if my son's wife could wear it. I'll ask her. Send me a picture of the dress. So I took out the stored dress, took a photo, and sent it. But soon after, we received a refusal. She's already chosen a dress she wants to wear. Of course, there are preferences in dress design and style. I was a bit disappointed, but what could be done? That's fine. If there's anything else we can help with, just let us know, I replied. But again, a disheartening response came. We're handling everything ourselves. Indeed, a wedding is for the couple themselves. Still, feeling excluded, I couldn't help but worry. With a heavy heart, I attended my eldest son's wedding. The ceremony, enveloped in happiness, concluded smoothly. The reception was lively, with delicious food, and Donald looked very happy. Seeing my eldest son like that eased my anxiety. After changing outfits, the newlyweds went around for photos. Elizabeth, unlike when she first greeted us, was all smiles. At the bride's side, they posed for many photos, so I looked forward to our turn. But when Elizabeth reached us, "What's the next pose?" the photographer asked her. "We're moving to the next table," she replied. I was shocked. Seeing my reaction, Elizabeth gave me a cold look and said sharply,
"The star of the wedding is me. I don't have time to fuss over the in-laws."
And with that, she quickly moved on to the next table. As if I wasn't feeling low enough, another shock awaited me. Elizabeth was pregnant and would be having their first child in 6 months. It was certainly joyful news, but I learned of it through the words of the ceremony's MC. Looking around, it seemed Elizabeth's parents and relatives already knew. In contrast, we and the other relatives on the groom's side were visibly surprised. "Why didn't you tell us?" I couldn't contain my feelings and asked Donald. Without any sign of regret.
"Elizabeth didn't want to tell anyone outside of those she's close with,"
my eldest son said. That we, soon-to-be family, were not considered close was astonishing to me. I could barely stand.
"Pregnancy can upset hormonal balance, causing irritability. I read it in a comic. It must be why Elizabeth's been so harsh."
George kindly tried to console me, seeing how upset I was since the photo session. I had felt a distance from Elizabeth since she first greeted us, but still hoped we could gradually become closer and build a good relationship. I didn't want to give up on our relationship with Elizabeth. But maybe it was impossible. My faint hope of getting along well with Elizabeth vanished entirely. And after the wedding, we barely communicated with the newlywed couple as days passed. Worried about Donald's absence, George occasionally visited us. 6 months after the wedding, we got a message from our eldest son.
"The baby was born."
The photo sent with the message showed a small baby wrapped in a blanket. Though I hadn't been involved and did not feel like I became a grandparent, I still wanted to celebrate. When I expressed our desire to visit, Donald quickly invited us over, and my husband and I headed to their apartment the next holiday. But when we arrived at the appointed time, our son was out.
"Donald has gone shopping."
Elizabeth, opening the door, didn't hide her annoyance and frowned as she tried to close the door. In a hurry, I handed her a $3,000 celebration gift.
"If there's anything we can help with, just say it. Things have changed since our time, but we want to offer whatever support we can."
Child-rearing is very hard. I said this hoping to lessen Elizabeth's burden, but it backfired.
"Don't act all high and mighty. We're cutting ties with in-laws like you,"
Elizabeth yelled and threw the gift envelope I had just handed her into the trash bin by the entrance. My husband and I were speechless at her actions. Elizabeth glared at us.
"I didn't want to hear such nonsense, that's why I didn't invite you. But he invited you without asking me."
It must have been Donald's decision to allow our visit. Elizabeth seemed unforgiving, starting to complain about our son.
"It's unbelievable to invite people home without my consent. He's so useless. I made him go shopping on purpose, thinking he would let you in if he was here."
Hearing the true feelings of my son's wife, I was dumbfounded. Taking advantage of our silence, she continued.
"I'll tell Donald you saw the baby and left in a hurry. Please don't come again. It's a nuisance."
As Elizabeth was saying this,
"Wait!"
she ignored my voice and closed the front door. Then, I heard the sound of the lock being engaged. I realized I was clenching my fists tightly, shocked by what just happened in front of me. My husband didn't say anything, but it was clear he was angry. We could no longer think of Elizabeth, who had called our son useless and trampled on our feelings of celebration, as family. Frustrated, we decided to cut ties with her. After that, there was no contact from Donald for 6 months. Though we had cut ties with our eldest son, our younger son George introduced us to his girlfriend Stella, and they started visiting our home occasionally. Initially wary because of Elizabeth, I gradually warmed up to Stella, who always greeted me with a smile. Eventually, they got married. They even considered moving in with us, thinking about our future.
My mom and grandmother were very close. I hope to have a similar relationship with Madison.
Stella told me. I was so moved I almost cried. Seeing my reaction, my husband said, "We would love that." And so, we decided to live together with our son and his wife. At the wedding, Stella wore my wedding dress. Both she and her parents
Thank you for letting me wear such a beautiful dress.
thanked me. While feeling happy, I couldn't help but be disappointed with my eldest son and his wife's behavior. Elizabeth seemed to be in a bad mood at the celebration and ignored us throughout. Donald didn't do anything about her behavior. I was only worried if our younger son and his wife were upset by their attitude. But, to our relief, they looked happy after the ceremony.
Thank you for yesterday. It was a wonderful memory.
Stella said to me with a smile the next day. Later, Stella became pregnant, and I took over the household chores, thinking of her burden. But whenever I looked away, Stella would try to help.
Stella, please rest. I'll handle it. Madison, you're too protective. I'm fine with doing this much.
While having such exchanges, I felt happy living with my son, his wife, and my husband. That day, my husband and George went hiking together, and we were having a relaxed time. Then, the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, there stood Elizabeth and a young girl who had attended George's wedding. I hadn't been told anything at the wedding, but seeing the girl who resembled Donald, I was sure she was his child. The girl seemed not to recognize me and hid behind Elizabeth, looking scared.
It's been a while, Madison. Good to see you're well.
Contrary to her past behavior, Elizabeth greeted me politely. Then she started.
Well,
She began to tell her story.
life has become tough recently, and I came to ask for support.
Support?
Yes. I quit my job because things weren't going well with my boss. But right after I resigned, Donald was fired. His salary was cut, and he was almost transferred to a subsidiary, so he quit too.
Donald tried to find another job but hasn't secured a stable position yet, leaving them both essentially unemployed. Elizabeth had suggested to Donald to ask us for support, but our son apparently refused. After quitting her job without consulting and finding out Donald was fired, Elizabeth called him useless. Donald seemed to be quite angry with her for that. Since then, Donald, who had always followed Elizabeth's lead, started to defy her.
That's why I came here directly.
She said with a troubled look. But all I wanted to say was, "So what?" From our conversation, it was clear that her attitude was the reason things didn't work out with her boss, and I could understand why our eldest son was angry with her. It was too convenient for her to seek help only when in trouble, especially after she caused us to sever ties. But she was desperate for my sympathy.
I even asked my parents, but they refused any financial help. You're the only ones I can turn to. We'll starve at this rate.
Elizabeth pleaded with teary eyes.
Please help us.
However, my heart remained unmoved. I refuse.
Why? It's all because Donald quit his job. As parents, shouldn't you feel responsible and help?
Responsible? You're adults, sort your own issues. You're the ones who cut ties, remember? We're saving money for Stella's pregnancy and our soon-to-be-born grandchild. We have no money to spare for you.
What? That's ridiculous.
Her weak demeanor changed instantly. The moment I refused, Elizabeth raised her voice.
Why support your younger son's wife and not help us?
At this moment, I was approached from behind.
Madison, are you okay?
Worried that I hadn't returned, Stella had come to the entrance. Seeing Stella, Elizabeth's face turned red with anger.
You're living together, too. That's not fair. I'm the wife of the eldest son. It's wrong for the wife of the younger son to move in. Get out.
Startled by the sudden shouting, Stella tensed up.
It's you who should leave this place.
I immediately stepped forward to defend Stella.
Stella proposed living together, considering our future. Unlike you, who only think of yourself. What? Just because I treated you a bit harshly, you favor her? Fine, if you don't support us, you'll never see this child again.
With those words, Elizabeth forcefully pushed a hidden girl to the front. Seeing the girl on the verge of tears, I felt something snap inside me.
You're really the worst kind of person. Huh? Say whatever you want. I've always disliked your preachy attitude. If you care about the child, don't use her as a tool. If you don't change your ways, we'll cut ties with you. Don't ever come to our house again. Don't joke with me, you miser.
Even after this, Elizabeth continued to fuss, using her daughter to sway us, but I never nodded in agreement. Though I thought to let her rant as she pleased, seeing the girl scared by Mom's yelling, I decided to take a drastic action.
If you stay any longer, I'll call the police. Leave quickly if you don't want to make a big deal out of this.
At the mention of the police, Elizabeth, who had been bustling about, stopped talking and left with a look of despair. Later, I heard that Donald and Elizabeth were struggling to find new jobs. Despite finding each other's presence intolerable, they couldn't afford to separate due to lack of assets, and so they were stuck together. They were always fighting. And their bad reputation spread in the neighborhood. They were even reported to the child welfare office, concerned about the bad influence on the child. For the child's sake, my husband and I are considering taking her in. Several months later, Stella safely gave birth to a healthy baby girl. Since her parents' home was far away, Stella didn't go back, so I dedicated myself to supporting her. George and my husband dote on her.
When she grows up, the 5 of us will go hiking together.
They are excited about it. I am committed to doing everything I can to ensure this happiness continues.
The idea of caring for an old woman or dealing with high school kids, what a nuisance. There's no room for a baby here, right? You should leave.
I was a teenager, jerked around by my selfish brother and his wife. But, in an unexpected turn, my life changed for the better. My name is Riley. Lately, at 40, it seems like gravity's winning the battle, my cheeks sagging into a slight bulldog look. Oh dear. Is it hard to be against aging? However, reminds me, my mother never really had sagging skin or wrinkles. Wish I had inherited that. I think she was quite beautiful. After divorcing my father over his affair when I was young, she raised my older brother Alexander and me on her own, until one day. Suddenly, she collapsed with a brain disease. Alexander was a freshman in high school, and I was in middle school. My mother woke up, but was paralyzed from the waist down and struggled to speak. She mostly seemed lost in a daze. That's when my trials began. After learning about her condition, what are we going to do now? Alexander quickly said, I thought, we'll support her together. But, Alexander said, I can't handle caregiving. Mom wouldn't want a man taking care of her, right? I have to study, so you handle it all. And he just dumped it all on me. As a middle schooler, I had no idea how to care for someone. I couldn't even imagine the workload or how hard it would be, just felt anxious about the future. Could I really take care of her all by myself? Not long ago, I was just a kid, spoiled by her. The only adult I could turn to was my father, who had abandoned us, and I didn't even know how to reach him. I learned for the first time that she hadn't even received child support from her husband. Even if I could contact him, he would have probably abandoned us again. Knowing the hardships she faced working day and night pained me. Moreover, she was young and ineligible for care insurance, so we couldn't get proper care services. Though we managed living expenses with welfare, there was hardly any external support. There might have been better systems in place, but as a middle schooler, I couldn't understand the bureaucratic paperwork. I just followed what the hospital advised, processing paperwork as told. Yet, Alexander turned a blind eye to me, leaving not only mother's care but all household chores to me. Living in the same house, he enjoyed leisure, sleeping whenever he wanted, while I gave up studying hard and friendships, often sleepless due to caring for my mother. Thus, my teenage years dedicated to household chores and caring for her, I was thrust upon me by Alexander. It happened the year after my mother fell ill. Suddenly, I'm dropping out of high school, Alexander announced. I couldn't help but hope he might assist with the mother's care. I was in my second year of middle school, needed study harder. I needed help, but what he said next was unbelievable. Got a girl pregnant. I'm marrying her and we'll live here. What? Turns out, he had impregnated a classmate, dropping out to raise the child in our home. A person who wouldn't even care for his own mother, how could he care for a baby? A child making a child, that's what it seemed like. I protested loudly. I don't want to live with you. But, don't worry, I won't bother you. He just laughed it off with a nonchalant attitude. Of course, I couldn't believe those words. For the first time, I wanted to escape. But back then, I was powerless. A month later, Alexander's girlfriend, Stella, moved in. At first, I know it's tough at home. I'll help. She was saying nice things to me, but as expected, within 3 days, I can't strain myself because of the baby. She had me fetching even a cup of coffee. It's no surprise, considering she chose to be Alexander's wife. The high school dropouts stayed home mostly, doing nothing for my mother. When I rushed home to care for her, "What's for dinner?" That's how they would ask me. Moreover, at night, they'd make noise, robbing me of my precious sleep. It's no wonder I lost 10 pounds after Stella arrived. Eventually, Alexander started working part-time at a grocery store, reducing their late-night disturbances, but then Stella's baby was born. Now, it was the baby's cries all night. Honestly, even being told she was my niece, I couldn't find her cute, given my feelings towards Alexander and Stella. I might sound cold, but back then, I was struggling with my studies, trying not to take out my frustration on my mother. I was still a child, with no capacity to adore Alexander's child. Despite being on the edge, I managed to get into high school, thanks to my teacher's extra help. Not the school I wanted, but the closest one with lower standards though. Not ideal, but better than not going at all. The money saved from Alexander dropping out of high school was used for my tuition. Maybe that's one thing to thank him for. I believed things would get easier once I started high school. That's what I hoped. Then, right before starting high school, one day, "Hey, Riley, how about this place?" "Huh?" Stella showed me a pamphlet for a condominium. I thought for a moment they were moving out now that they had a child. However, it was all for single living. "This one's close to a grocery store. Good for a girl like you, near a busy street, safer." "Stella, I don't plan on moving." "Huh?" She asked back with a smile, but her eyes weren't laughing. I felt pressured, as if I had no choice. But, okay, I understand. I couldn't just say, "We should consider my mother." "Just take her with you." "That's impossible. I have nowhere to go." "I'm helping you look for a place. Just find a part-time job or something." "That's terrible." "Terrible? You're in high school now, perfectly able to work. Living at home is just pampering yourself, pampering. You're in high school, time to move out." "Why do I have to listen to you?" I argued back, tears in my eyes. "I am Alexander's wife. I'm his family. I've got a baby, but I've got an old woman to care for and a high schooler at the same time. How could you deal with harsh situation? Get out quickly." Before I knew it, Stella grabbed my collar and threw me out. Then Alexander roughly dragged my mother out, here, handing her to me. I couldn't believe these were the actions of parents. Stella then kicked my mother's wheelchair and threw my school bag at me. "See ya." and closed the door.
Wait! Please wait!
I yelled, banging on the door, but they didn't come out. I was really being thrown out. That's when I realized.
What's the matter, young lady?
The voice came from Harris, the old man living across the street.
Mr. Harris!
He asked what happened. I've been thrown out with my disabled mother. But I couldn't said. It felt embarrassing, somehow shameful. Come on in for some coffee. He then gestured for me to come over with a smile. Though I was hesitant to enter a neighbor's home so quickly, it started raining, and I couldn't leave my mother out, so I gratefully accepted. Harris gave us towels and warm coffee. Noticing my tension, he made small talk, asking about my favorite things to help me relax. Eventually,
I was kicked out by Alexander and his wife.
I opened up.
What will you do now? Do you have somewhere to go? I don't know. How about I offer you a place to live? No, we can't. We don't have the money. Oh my. I wouldn't take money from a young lady like you. It's for free. That can't be right. It's okay. Usually, old folks have extra money, and young people should take advantage when they can. I'll even cover your tuition. We can hire someone to care for your mother. Why would you do for us? Don't you remember? Remember what? I used to be the janitor at your elementary school. I'm sorry, I don't remember. No wonder. You were only in 2nd grade, and I didn't have gray hair then. You found me behind the school suffering from chest pain and called for help.
Now that he mentioned it, I vaguely remembered.
After that, I quit and moved here and realized you were my neighbor. But just for that, you can't possibly owe me this much. No, you see, if you hadn't found me quickly, I could have ended up like your mother. I'm really grateful.
I couldn't believe it, but Mr. Harris's eyes weren't deceitful like Alexander's. He genuinely seemed to care about us.
You might be wary of a stranger offering you a home. So how about living with my granddaughter? She's in college and studying to be a caregiver. She could help.
That sounded reassuring. I didn't want to live with anyone like Alexander again. It was a tough decision, but honestly, I had no other choice. I decided to trust Harris and accept his offer. The house he provided was a mansion, the likes of which I'd never seen, and it was wheelchair accessible. His granddaughter, Scarlett, said, I was planning to live alone for college but thought it might be lonely. She happily agreed to live with us and even shared the caregiving and household chores. I couldn't help but think, have I come to heaven? It was such a blissful life. Not only did Harris make it possible for me to attend high school, but he also offered to pay for my college, allowing me to pursue an education I thought was impossible. Scarlett was truly like a sister to me, supporting me through my studies. She helped me study for college because I hardly could have attended the high school class. Thanks to her, I was accepted into a university with much higher standards. Later, I learned Harris was from a family that owned a large corporation, involved in everything from food to caregiving services. He had been a janitor as a post-retirement hobby. One day, how can I repay you? I asked him. Then,
why don't you work at one of our caregiving companies?
He suggested. It didn't feel like repaying him, but he said,
seeing you work hard would be the best repayment for me.
So, I accepted the job at his company. Thanks to my job, I was able to earn enough to afford outside care for my mother and live in a wheelchair-friendly house. Furthermore, Harris said,
I want you to meet my grandson, Lucas.
He introduced me to Lucas, who was set to eventually take over the caregiving business I worked at. Initially, I hadn't planned on it, but I was drawn to him, a year older than me, and his inclusive nature. We started dating and eventually married. Harris confessed,
I had planned for you two to get together from the start.
He said that. When we announced our marriage,
now we're truly family.
He said with a twinkle in his eye, though I was not fortunate with my real family, aside from my mother. I remember being happy to have found a family in that way. My understanding husband agreed to live with my mother. My in-laws were very kind, and we were blessed with 2 children, leading a peaceful life until one day.
Riley, isn't this your brother?
What? Lucas handed me a resume, and there he was, aged but unmistakably Alexander.
It is Alexander. He's applied for a caregiving position at one of our homes. He's got an interview next week, among other candidates.
Caregiving. He would never do that.
I wonder how he ended up applying here.
I don't know. Hey, what if I conduct the interview? He grinned at my suggestion.
That's a great idea.
He said that. On the day of the interview, Alexander appeared in a suit, but his shirt was wrinkled and untucked. He didn't look like someone ready to work.
Please, take a seat.
He complied, and our eyes met for a moment.
Riley! Long time no see.
I smiled, speaking to my startled brother. Why are you here?
I'm the interviewer. Why are you here? I thought you despised caregiving.
I love caring for the elderly, you know.
Lies. After what you did to my mother and me.
I was young.
Please, Riley!
He whispered, but then suddenly shouted to beg.
What's all about? I've got no other choice. Please hire me. What do you mean?
He exploded with emotion.
I've been unemployed since my part-time factory job in my 30s. Stella says she can't support someone who only eats and does nothing. She started despising me when our child began daycare. I think she's seeing someone else. But she's all I have. If I don't get a job, she'll leave me for good.
Alexander, a grown man, broke down and cried right there, seemingly seeking pity. I won't let him forget what he did to us.
That's all?
Surprised by my response, he said,
How can you be so cold after hearing my misfortune? I was just a student when you and your family threw me out. I managed with minimal welfare while taking care of you all. That's different. Maybe you were fired because you're the kind of person who easily abandons family. Perhaps you lacked something essential for the job.
Silenced by my words, he just trembled.
Did you ever help with the kids or housework? Or were you just lazing around?
He seemed shocked, probably because I hit the nail on the head.
No wonder you're not treated like a human. You're like a walrus, just eating and lying around. Walruses are cute, but a husband like that is just annoying. Stella probably didn't find another man, she just grew to dislike you. And I can see why from this conversation.
He had nothing to say, just shaking.
Sorry, but a company can't hire someone who'd kick out your own mother and sister. We're not that desperate.
What?
You're not getting it? You're not hired. No one with 15 job changes like yours could be natural.
His resume showed short stints at each job, likely due to being fired. He's always been self-centered, unfit for teamwork or considerate work. Indeed, even during this interview, his selfishness was evident.
I mean, I only have caregiving jobs left. Thought so. Don't worry, I'll spread the word in our affiliates not to hire you.
With a smile, I said,
Please! Do not such a thing!
And Alexander apologized again.
That's non-negotiable for the elderly's safety. And, actually, I'm not really an interviewer. The real interviews ended long ago, and we've already chosen someone. You were never going to be hired. I just gave you a fake schedule. So, no matter what, you won't be hired. Sorry about that.
I grabbed his collar and threw him out like he once did to me.
Goodbye.
And with a smile, I waved goodbye. He tried to re-enter the room, but Luca's subordinate, who was standing by outside, threatened,
If you make any more noise, I'll call the police.
And they escorted him out of the building. That was the last battle with Alexander. Afterward, he sent a letter to my company. He couldn't find work and was divorced by Stella. The letter begged for help and a job. Typical of his self-centeredness. I ignored it. He doesn't deserve help after trampling on my mother and me. I hope he learns from being on the receiving end of hardship. Meanwhile, I continue to live a peaceful life. All thanks to Harris, who took in my mother and me. He is aging, his legs growing weaker, but I still visit him regularly. My middle school children also adore him, often visiting him on their own without my knowledge. This spring, we took my mother and Harris for a picnic at a nearby lake. We're planning a summer trip. Next year, and the year after, I want to create many more wonderful memories, making up for my difficult childhood. Despite those hardships, I'm glad to have been born. I'm grateful for meeting those people. I am happy now. My name is Mary. I'm 28 years old. After graduating from college with a degree in life design, I've been working at a design company for 5 years. I have a partner and we recently had a wedding. My partner's name is Kevin. Kevin works in sales at an advertising agency. He's kind and trustworthy. We'd been gradually preparing for our wedding, amidst our work and daily lives. Both of us are only children, and our parents were eagerly looking forward to our marriage. But there's this unbelievable person who tried to ruin our wedding. This time, I want to talk about that person, Rory, a colleague of Kevin's at work. It was a few months after Kevin and I got engaged and had sent out our wedding invitations. I was invited to a cafe by my college friend, Kate. It's been a while, Kate. What did you want to talk about? Mary, what should I do? My boyfriend, he broke off our engagement.
Broke off the engagement? What do you mean?
Asked by a coworker, Kate had reluctantly joined a party to make up numbers.
Just put in an appearance for a minute, and you can leave early.
She was told that. I had kept declining again and again because I was engaged, but I couldn't refuse outright. Kate didn't think she drank much, but she got quite drunk. Her memory was fuzzy, and next thing she knew, it was morning. And then, I was apparently assaulted while I was drunk and asleep.
No way! By one of the men at the party?
Kate confided with tears streaming down her face. Then, she touched her belly. I was speechless. Kate had gotten pregnant that night at the party. She had maintained a chaste relationship with her fiancé. It definitely wasn't her fiancé's child. Kate couldn't keep it a secret and confessed everything honestly. Then, her fiancé exploded in anger. He scolded her for her careless behavior and called off their engagement. After telling me this, Kate broke down in tears.
What should I do? I'm so stupid. I never thought this would happen. Kate, it's not your fault. The man who assaulted a drunk woman is to blame. It's a crime.
We must make the man responsible face the consequences. We must never give up. I decided to be there for Kate, no matter what.
So, do you know who the guy is?
Yeah. There were 3 men, but the most suspicious one is... I was shocked to hear the name. There was someone with the same name among Kevin's colleagues. When I told Kevin about my conversation with Kate, he looked pained.
Rory! Damn it! What a terrible thing he's done. Is it really him? The Rory who's your colleague? Yeah. He was bragging a while back about sleeping with a woman from a trading company. We can't forgive this,
Kevin said, clenching his fists tightly. Rory worked in sales at the same advertising agency as Kevin, and he's the son of the executive director. His personality was frivolous and he was a bit of a show-off. He tended to get carried away and acted recklessly. Moreover, he lacked a sense of responsibility and tended to shift blame and escaped when things went south.
Someone else will clean up his mess, he thinks. He's the worst. He's even blamed me for his mistakes several times. Truly awful.
We must make Rory pay for what he did to Kate. In secret, we began to help Kate prepare to sue Rory. Then, a few days later, the day of my wedding with Kevin arrived. The issue with Kate was still unresolved, but the wedding couldn't be postponed. I did contact Kate to apologize.
I'm sorry, My friend is going through a tough time, and here I am getting married.
Don't worry about it. I'm sorry for canceling my attendance so suddenly. Kate congratulated me on my wedding multiple times. Determined to honor her feelings, I decided to make today's ceremony beautiful. But one thing bothered me. Rory, a colleague of the groom, was also there. I'm really sorry. If we didn't invite him, it would cause trouble later. It's okay. We can't help it. Let's make him pay for his crimes after this is over. Rory was making a scene, drinking more than enough welcome drinks. He was more conspicuous than us at our wedding reception. And it wasn't in a good way. His face was bright red. His eyes leered. And he wouldn't stop talking. His inner ugliness was all too apparent on the outside. This man ruined my dear friend's future. I wished he would just leave. But I couldn't say such a thing. I endured it, following Kevin's lead. All the while, Rory continued his commotion. As the reception progressed, it was time for the best man's speech. Suddenly, Rory enthusiastically raised his hand.
Hey, hey, hey! Let me as a colleague say a few words first.
It wasn't planned, but Kevin's dad allowed it, thinking it was a good opportunity. Kevin and I exchanged glances. We had a bad feeling. Rory, unsteady on his feet, went to the microphone and bowed. Then he grinned.
Actually, I have some unfortunate news for everyone here. Our groom, Kevin. You see, he once impregnated my girlfriend.
The banquet hall erupted into chaos. Everyone's attention turned to Kevin. I saw Kevin's mom faint in the family section of the groom's side. My relatives stood up one after another and demanding.
What do you mean? Explain this.
Kevin was cornered and visibly shaken. The staff was confused. Rory was laughing loudly. He clearly enjoying the turmoil he caused. I couldn't stand it anymore.
Enough is enough. What's fun about making up nonsense and troubling people? You're the one who assaulted my friend and got her pregnant. I know it. I will never forgive you for what you did to my friend, and we will definitely sue you.
My outburst suddenly quieted the hall. I borrowed a microphone from a nearby staff member and continued.
Recently, my friend was assaulted at a party and became pregnant against her will. She's in utter despair. The perpetrator of that assault is him, Rory. No, not true. Don't make up such nonsense. It's not a lie, we have evidence. We conducted a DNA test on the fetus. It didn't match with any man but you. What? When did they do such a test? Everything is almost ready for the lawsuit. Be prepared. Honestly, I didn't want to invite you here. Kevin and I struggled with it. But the incident came to light after we sent the invitations, so we endured it.
At the request, I passed the microphone to Kevin. He sighed deeply, glared at Rory, and said,
You recklessly lie ruined Mary and my reception. I'll never forget this grudge. You will pay for your crimes.
Now, all eyes in the hall were on Rory. Caught in his guilt, Rory started yelling pathetically.
Kevin, you're getting too big for your boots. It's your fault for getting married. You shouldn't have gotten married before me, someone like you.
Rory was subdued by security and escorted out of the venue. He continued to resist pathetically until the end. As order was restored, the reception resumed. Kevin's boss, Tom, addressed the situation.
I apologize for my subordinate's terrible behavior. He will be dealt with severely. His misconduct and lies have been a major issue within our company. As his superior, I deeply regret not guiding him properly.
Tom apologized. And then he esteered Kevin's honor. Meanwhile, Kevin's sincerity is well known in our company. Even when troubled by that man earlier, Kevin handled it calmly. His focus on maintaining harmony in the department, rather than his personal interests, is truly admirable. There aren't many men as trustworthy and promising as Kevin. Mary, you're lucky. You've found a wonderful partner.
I sincerely congratulate the two of you on your marriage.
Tom concluded. The hall erupted in applause. Then, relatives and friends came to congratulate us. Everyone apologized to Kevin, saying they were sorry for doubting him. Kevin just gave a wry smile. A warm atmosphere returned to the hall. If it weren't for that man, Kate could have enjoyed such happiness too. While enjoying the reception, my hatred for Rory deepened. Later, I heard Rory was hung out to dry at Kevin's company. Tom was really angry and explained everything at the executive meeting. The executive director, Rory's father, was present. He deeply apologized to the president and everyone in the meeting room.
Please allow me to apologize, as a father. My son has caused you all great inconvenience. I'm truly sorry. Dad! No, it's not like that. I didn't mean to. About the party, it was just the alcohol and an irresistible force. Shut up. I don't want to hear another word from you. I made a mistake in how I raised you. You're a burden to the company, a disgrace to our family. You're the blemish of my life.
Even after being disowned by his father, Rory continued his pathetic resistance. But his misconduct and foolishness were already well known to all. Not a single employee sided with Rory or tried to help him. Eventually, Rory chose to resign voluntarily. Everyone at work was relieved. Kevin told me that. It was truly pitiful to be rejoiced at one's departure. Naturally, no one attempted to organize a farewell party for Rory. Packing his belongings, Rory left the company with drooped his shoulders. There were developments in the assault case too. Kate's former fiancé filed a claim for damages against Rory. The cost of the engagement ring, the money paid to the venue, cancellation fees, and more. He had covered most of it. The claim for damages is quite substantial.
Kate, what about you? The Rory's lawyer offered a settlement, right?
I absolutely refused to just take the money and end this. He must atone for his crime. Kate no longer had the baby in her womb. She had a miscarriage at 4 months. Likely it was due to the intense stress and sorrow she endured. The sad experience seemed to have made Kate stronger. The amount of damages demanded from Rory by Kate's ex-fiancé was around $30,000. Rory tried to borrow money from his parents, but they firmly refused. So, he had to cover it all with his savings and loans. Rory tried to find a new job but struggled to make it to the final interview.
His frivolous appearance must be getting in the way, Kevin speculated.
Recently, Rory has been working multiple part-time jobs just to earn his daily expenses. Most of the money he earns, however, goes towards paying off his debts. A few days later, I got a message from Kate saying she had filed a lawsuit against Rory. She was ready to fight, with her lawyer by her side. DNA tests and testimonies confirmed that Rory was undoubtedly the father of the child. Taking advantage of someone drunk and unconscious to commit a forceful act falls under the crime of sexual assault. The statutory penalty is a fixed-term imprisonment of at least 5 years. Unfortunately for Kate, Rory's lawyer was quite skilled. In the end, Rory was sentenced to 4 years in prison. As he was leaving the courtroom, he repeatedly apologized to Kate.
I was apologized to over and over, but I never thought of forgiving him. That's right. He should live the rest of his life atoning for his sins.
Rory's actions, driven by his desires, disrupted Kate's life. The extinguishing of a small life was not unrelated to him. The crime committed by Rory was not only taking the precious life of a fetus, but also subjecting the mother to immense stress. Rory, who acted recklessly without thinking of the consequences, caused suffering to many. He should spend his entire life atoning for his sins. I strongly wished it. The 4 years without Rory seemed to bring calm to many. I heard Kate recently started a new relationship.
I told him everything. About being a victim of sexual crime, about the miscarriage.
It was hard. But he said it must have been tough. I'll take care of everything.
It's wonderful. Really wonderful that you found such a great person.
When I heard the story, I couldn't help but tear up myself. A person who knew about Kate's emotional scars and the details of the incident, yet still chooses to stay by her side. He seems to be a much more understanding and kinder man than her previous fiancé. In these past 4 years, Kevin and I also became parents. Our child is a boy, now a year and a half old. Kevin looks after him when I'm not around. Every day, we're fumbling through parenting, hustling, and bustling. How about you, Mary? How's married life? Is the baby cute? Thanks to you, all is well. We fight sometimes, but our child is unconditionally adorable. I'm envious. I want a child soon too. I still think about the one I lost.
Kate, don't blame yourself, okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm looking forward. Someday, I want to welcome a child with my current partner. And this time, I want to love them with all my heart. Kate's emotional wounds will probably never completely heal. But I'm sure the happy times ahead will heal her. Let's both keep pushing forward. That day, Kate and I waved goodbye to each other. One day, Kevin told me he had encountered Rory, who had been released from prison. When he was walking down the street during work, Rory approached him. His hairstyle and look were different, but his eyes and way of speaking were the same. Kevin said with a look of disgust. Apparently, Rory had asked him for money. He's been going around asking acquaintances for money, even just $1. When he asked me if he managed to borrow any, I just replied, "Don't ask." Of course. No one would want to deal with him. Everyone knows about his crimes. What happened next? He started saying, "Why me?" So I scolded him. It's your own fault your life is a mess. Reflect on it. Rejected by Kevin, Rory slumped his shoulders and disappeared into the crowd. Later, Kevin heard a disheartening story about Rory from the executive director. Rory had cunningly swindled money from a young relative who had just started working. That fool. He said he could multiply the money through investments.
How awful. What happened to the money?
We caught him and made him return it all. Then, we cut him off. I'm fed up. I'm really sorry for the trouble my son caused, especially at your wedding. If he troubles you again, please contact me right away.
Thank you so much, sir.
The executive director looked very tired, perhaps due to the stress. Having a child with such a character brought unimaginable hardships to parents. Kevin felt truly sorry for him. He strongly hoped his unfilial son, Rory, would receive the punishment he deserved. A few months later, on a holiday afternoon, Kevin and I went for a drive. The purpose was to get our child to nap. When we put him in the car, he fell asleep quickly. There was a large river running through the city, with vast riverbanks on both sides.
When I was gazing out absent-mindedly, I let out an unintentional "Aw, what's wrong? Did you forget something?" "No, it's not that. I just saw someone down by the riverbank." "It was him."
Him?
"You mean Rory?" "Yes. He was dirty and disheveled, walking with others dressed similarly."
Even from a distance, his walk and gestures made it clear. It was undoubtedly Rory. Now, it seemed he found a place to stay somewhere along this riverbank. He was probably scraping his living by collecting cans and old books to sell. He might be lining up for soup kitchens, or perhaps even scavenging leftover food. I didn't feel sorry for him. Rather, it seemed fitting for someone like him. Rory, who hurt my friend and tried to ruin Kevin's and my wedding. For years in prison was too lenient. I thought he deserved to atone for his actions over a much longer period. Hoped he would fall even lower than where he was now. I strongly wished that. Life for Kevin and me has been smooth sailing. Calm, without major troubles, just as we'd hoped. Our relationship with both of our in-laws is good, and our child is growing up healthy. Neither Kevin nor I have any intention of spoiling our child. We don't want to raise someone who finds joy in others' suffering. What's right and what's wrong. What it means to behave as a decent human being. I want to be a parent who can properly convey these values. Rory's crimes have led us to these convictions. In that sense, his existence may not be entirely useless. Children are a nuisance, so go to a facility. Who said I have a mom? My name is Madison. I'm in the 5th grade, living with my dad and mom. Dad is really kind, and he takes me out on his days off. Mom acts normal when Dad is around, but when he's not, she seems cold and distant, making it a bit hard to talk to her.
See you.
Dad, as usual, leaves for work early in the morning. As I eat breakfast. I'll see you later, I said. Checking the clock, it's almost time for me to go to school. I need to hurry up and get dressed after eating quickly. Thanks for the meal. After finishing, I place my dishes in the sink and head to my room to change. Wait. Mom stops me, pointing to the sink. Who's going to wash these? Her eyes are cold, almost angry. Normally, I'd just change and go to school, but it felt like I'd be scolded if I did. I'll wash them, I murmured. What? I can't hear you, you're too quiet. Mom suddenly yells. My body trembles. But feeling guilty, I apologize. I'm sorry. I'll wash them. Of course. From now on, take care of your own things. Mom angrily tosses her apron on the sofa and goes to her room. Reflecting on her words, I wash the breakfast dishes and leave for school. At school, while talking with friends, the conversation turns to parents. Hearing their stories, everyone else's moms seem kind, and though they get scolded, they seem close. What's your mom like? Suddenly asked by a friend, I'm at a loss for words. But I think maybe it's my misunderstanding that mom is cold, and her bad mood is because I haven't been doing things for myself. She's very kind, I respond. Hearing this, my friend says, that's nice. But I feel conflicted inside. I'm home. When I return home, Mom isn't there. Maybe she went shopping, I think, and start my homework in my room. Before I know it, it's dark outside, and it's dinner time, but she hasn't come back yet. Then, I hear noises from the entrance and the fridge opening. Stepping out of my room, I see her in the kitchen. I am so hungry, so I go to the kitchen. Welcome back, I said to her, and she responds, I'm back. Her brief reply without looking back indicates she's still in a bad mood.
What's for dinner tonight?
I ask cheerfully. But maybe that was a mistake. When Mom turns around, her face looks scary. Huh? I told you to do things for yourself, didn't I? Dad will be back soon, and I'm busy cooking. Unable to say anything more to her, I start to make instant noodles when Dad comes home.
Hello.
Hearing Dad's voice, Mom quickly takes the instant noodles from my hands. Confused about what to do, Dad enters the kitchen.
Oh, are we starting dinner now?
Seeing Dad's kind face, I almost cry. Welcome back. Just got back from shopping. Dinner will be ready soon. Just wait a bit more. Mom's face softens. I can't tell if she's still angry, but the thought of eating Mom's cooking makes me happy. Later, we have dinner as a family, and I have a fun time playing games with Dad. Maybe Mom was just in a slightly bad mood. Thinking that there won't be any more scolding if I take care of myself properly, I fall asleep. From the next day, I try my best to do things by myself. I wash the breakfast dishes, fold the laundry, put it away, vacuum my room. And when Mom comes home late, I make instant noodles for myself. Thinking that this will surely make her happy, my face breaks into a smile. Mom hasn't praised me yet, but she's getting less angry. When Dad is around, the three of us have a good time together. I was happy about that. One time, I heard a groaning noise and woke up in the middle of the night. Thinking it might be a ghost, I dove under the covers. The groaning continued for a while, and as I trembled with fear, suddenly I heard an ambulance. It stopped nearby, and I realized it was right outside our house. Wondering who it was, I got out of bed and saw Dad being carried out.
Dad!
I shouted, rushing over. Dad looked pale and was sweating, obviously in a lot of pain. Tears came to my eyes, and clinging to the paramedic.
Please save Dad!
I begged. The paramedic put a hand on my head.
We're taking him to the hospital now,
he said. Then Mom and I followed the ambulance to the hospital, where Dad was taken away. We could only wait in the designated area. I was filled with anxiety, wondering what would happen if we lost Dad. But Mom, next to me, was handling her phone, not seeming worried at all. I cried alone, waiting for someone to tell me it was going to be okay. After what felt like an eternity, a doctor came over to us. Mom and the doctor spoke about something complicated, and all I understood was that Dad was ill and needed to be hospitalized. I was shocked that Dad had to fight a disease, and he couldn't come home for a while. Mom and I went home for now. After preparing for Dad's hospital stay, Mom left for the hospital again. Left alone at home, I lay in bed unable to sleep, and soon it was bright outside since it was early morning. School. I had to go to school. But I didn't feel like it. I didn't feel like eating, and just stayed under the covers.
Aren't you going to school?
Mom noticed me at noon. She didn't scold me for missing school but seemed busy and left for the hospital right away. Having eaten nothing since morning, I went to the kitchen. I ate the leftovers from last night's dinner as my meal. In the evening, Mom came back. She brought sandwiches. Eat this today.
I also bought some instant noodles for you to eat from tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you. I decided to follow her instructions, not wanting to bother her as she was busy with Dad. The next day, after having instant noodles for breakfast, I went to school. My friends asked why I was absent yesterday, and I lied, saying I felt sick. The teacher, seeming to know the situation, spoke kindly to me. When I got home, Mom wasn't there, probably at the hospital with Dad. I wanted to see Dad too. I thought I'd ask Mom to take me on the next day off. While doing my homework, the phone rang. I was the only one home, so I answered. Hello?
Oh, Madison?
What are you doing? It was Dad on the phone, and hearing his voice made me cry.
Dad! Are you okay now? I want to see you.
Hearing me cry, he spoke gently.
Sorry to worry you. I'm okay now. I want to see you too. I'd be happy if you could come with Mom. Yeah. I'll ask her.
Okay.
Oh, is she there?
I wondered where she was. She wasn't at home. I thought she was at Dad's hospital.
Mom isn't here. Isn't she at the hospital?
Hearing this, Dad seemed to realize something and spoke evasively.
Right. She just left a while ago. She'll be back soon. Madison, have you had something to eat?
Yeah. Mom bought some instant noodles and stuff. After I said that, he was silent for a moment, then.
Is that so?
He said, before changing the subject. After talking with him for a while, I heard the front door open, so I told him she was back. Dad asked me to hand the phone to her. And when she, who had just returned, took over the phone, she looked a bit shaken as she talked to Dad. I went back to my room, noticing the smell of cigarettes on her and wondering where she had been. The next day, Mom asked if I wanted to go to the hospital with her. I said yes, even though she seemed a bit reluctant, but she took me. Seeing Dad after a long time. He was connected to N4 but smiled when he saw me.
Madison! You came!
I hugged him. Seeing him looking well made me want to cry again, but I was so happy to see him. After talking with him for a while, Mom said it was time to go, and we left the room reluctantly. As I looked back, he was waving at me with a smile.
Come visit again,
he said. But I never thought that would be our last conversation. His condition suddenly worsened, and he passed away in no time. I couldn't believe he was gone, as Mom instructed me to wear mourning attire and took me to the funeral home. Many people came to say goodbye to him. Seeing Mom's detached demeanor made me wonder if Dad was really gone. Standing at the edge of the room, someone approached me. "Hey, aren't you Madison?" I turned around to see a woman standing behind me. I was confused, not recognizing her, and she sat down next to me. "It's been so long. I'm your aunt, Madison, your dad's sister." Looking at her, I saw she resembled Dad. I had no memory of an aunt, but I remembered Dad talking about his sister. "Aunt." "Yes, your aunt. Don't I look like your dad?" She laughed, looking just like Dad. Then she suddenly hugged me. "It's okay to cry. You've been strong, Madison." I must have been crying already because her words made me cry even more. It felt like the moment I realized I would never see Dad again. After a while, as my aunt soothed me, I thanked her and went to get a drink. When I entered the room, Mom was there. Seeing my tear-streaked face, she said coldly, "What? You cried? What an embarrassing face." Her words hurt. "Mom, aren't you sad?" I couldn't help asking her, seeing she wasn't grieving. "There's no point in being sad. He's gone." I trembled at Mom's cold words. I wondered if she hated Dad, despite all the happy times we had as a family. As I stood frozen, my aunt came over. "Oh, long time no see," she said with a smile, and Mom's expression changed. "Oh, it's been a while. Anything I can help with?" "No. There's nothing." "Then, Madison, let's go over there." My aunt took my hand and led me out of the room. It was clear that Mom was uncomfortable around her. Afterward, I stayed with my aunt until Dad's funeral ended. "Madison, it's time to go." A while after the funeral, Mom came to pick me up. My aunt had been holding my hand the whole time, but she let go to say goodbye. Her face looked a bit sad. "Madison, see you again." "Yeah, see you." Reluctantly leaving with Mom, an unfamiliar car pulled up. "Sorry to keep you waiting." A man, apparently Mom's acquaintance, was driving, and she opened the car door. I instinctively resisted getting into the car with a stranger. "Stop dawdling and get in." Mom's tone was unlike anything I'd heard from her before, and I reluctantly got in the car. The car drove in the opposite direction from our home, and I just watched the passing scenery outside. Feeling a bit scared in a car, not knowing where we were heading. "We're here. Get out now." As I was told to get off, there was a large building and I had no idea where I was. "Mom, where are we?" I asked, and Mom, lighting a cigarette, replied, "Kids are a nuisance, so off to the facility you go." "What?" Not understanding what I was told, a strange man and Mom drove away. I tried to chase the car for a while, but obviously couldn't catch up and gave up when I tripped. Lost and not knowing where to go, I was heading back to where I was left. Then, a car stopped beside me. The window rolled down and it was my aunt in the driver's seat. Never thought it'd come to this. "Madison, get in." Relieved to see my aunt, I quickly got into the car. She stroked my head and I cried quietly as my tension melted away. "How many times are you going to cry today, poor thing?" Riding in my aunt's car, we arrived at a house. It seemed to be her home. As I was told to come in. "Welcome home." A man's voice greeted us. I instinctively hid behind my aunt. "It's okay." Who laughed and said. I nervously looked at the man, a young guy standing and smiling at me. "Sorry, got you scared, huh? I'm this lady's husband. I guess I'm your uncle, in a way." He extended his hand for a handshake. Comforted by his kind face, I shook his hand, and he smiled again. "You must be hungry, right? We've got dinner ready, you need to eat a lot to grow." Annoying, just like Mom. Hearing their cheerful conversation, I couldn't help but smile too. Then my stomach growled, making me feel embarrassed, and they both burst into laughter. And so, I had a fun dinner time for the first time in a while. After dinner, they let me take a bath and even prepared pajamas for me. Then,
Come here.
as I was invited to the living room, they had prepared hot milk for me. Hot milk? Aren't you too old for that, Madison?
Hey! Don't kids love hot milk? No?
In such a cozy atmosphere, I found myself laughing along. And they laughed with me. Then, sit down, we have something to talk about. As I sat down in front of the hot milk, they began to speak.
Hey Madison, how about becoming our child?
I was about to drink my milk and choked on these words.
What?
Sorry. It was abrupt, wasn't it? My uncle patted my back. My aunt laughed.
Become our kid. You don't want to go back to that kind of mom, do you?
I was deep in thought. I didn't hate Mom. But thinking about what happened at home, Dad, and being abandoned, I was honestly scared to go back to her.
Actually, we've been in touch with your dad.
What? I was surprised to hear Dad's name. My aunt explained in detail. The person with Mom was her affair partner, and Dad had realized Mom was cheating. He was very worried about me. Dad's illness had gotten serious, and he might not have long left. He asked them to take care of me after he's gone. Hearing this, I couldn't stop my tears and desperately wanted to see him.
Your dad cared a lot about you and loved you.
My aunt's warm hand stroking my head made me internally shout thank you to Dad multiple times. Dear Dad. Fun-loving Dad. I decided to become strong for Dad.
I want to stay with you too.
Hearing this, both my aunt and uncle were happy. Staying with them would require some paperwork and might take a while, but they said it was fine to stay together until then. I decided to help out my aunt and uncle as much as I could. Helping with breakfast and dinner, cleaning the bathroom and toilet, until they started worrying that I was doing too much. Told to play like a grade schooler, I couldn't think of anything to do, so I decided to start on my homework.
Madison, were you always doing chores at home?
I was asked by my aunt during dinner. When I nodded, my uncle sitting next to me hugged me.
You've had it tough for a grade schooler. It's normal to help out. But I'm worried you've been pushing yourself too hard.
Indeed, maybe I was trying too hard to get praise from Mom. Realizing something I hadn't been aware of before, I fell silent. All that effort, never praised. I guess she never really cared.
You don't have to worry about anything here. You can help out, but what you should focus on are friends, school, and yourself. Take care of yourself.
My aunt's words resonated with me. My uncle, looking like he might cry, nodded repeatedly. I felt so happy to be with them. 2 weeks after Dad's funeral, I was called to the staff room at school. Wondering what it was about, I was told that Mom had called. The teachers probably didn't know the full story. Thinking it would trouble them if I didn't answer, I picked up the phone with trembling hands.
Hello.
Madison. Answer the phone quickly. Her voice, which I hadn't heard in a long time, was a shout, just like before. Where are you? You're not at the facility I left you at. I couldn't find my voice and remained silent. Are you listening? Well, never mind. I'm coming to pick you up. Then I'll get some allowance money. I need money right now. Hearing this, I felt my feelings for her cool. To think I wanted love, praise, and even betrayed Dad for someone like this. I was filled with regret. Now I have my aunt and uncle. I have a place where I belong. Dad is watching over me. I can be strong. I don't have a mom, do I? Before I knew it, I had said that to her. What? What are you talking about?
You must be mistaken. Goodbye.
Wait. I hung up the phone on my own. The teacher beside me looked shocked and asked,
Wasn't that your mom?
To which?
It was a stranger.
I replied. The call was treated as a suspicious call, and the school issued a warning. Worried that Mom might come to pick me up, I called my aunt from the school's payphone. My aunt said she would come right away and soon arrived. She explained the situation to the teachers, who contacted the child welfare office. After I went home, Mom apparently did come to pick me up, but the teachers handled it, and she left reluctantly with a dissatisfied look. Mom never stormed into the school again, but just to be safe, my aunt or uncle started picking me up before school ended. I felt sorry, but my aunt and uncle said, "Don't worry about it." With a smile. Thanks to them, I am living happy days. The teachers at school are also looking out for me, and I'm glad to have so many allies around me. Then, one day, a little while later, the phone rang at home. Lately, I've been answering calls to my aunt and uncle's house. So, as usual, I answered the phone. Hello. The voice I heard was one I didn't want to hear. Oh, Madison? So you were there after all. I froze, recognizing it was Mom. How did she know I was here? Nobody should have told her.
Come back quickly. Things are tough here.
She spoke unilaterally to my silence. According to her, her affair partner's company had gone bankrupt and they were out of money. If she was with me, she could get government assistance and couldn't live without it. She said she was in a de facto marriage with her affair partner and was considering breaking up if they couldn't survive financially. I couldn't quite grasp the story, only understanding that she needed me for money. That's what she had said when she called the school too, so she must be really out of money. As I remained silent, she got increasingly irritated. As I was being yelled at, the phone was taken from me. Turning around in surprise, there stood my aunt, smiling at me. But in the next moment, her face turned into a frightening one.
Answer when spoken to. Are you listening?
Enough.
I can hear you even without the yelling. What?
Mom's voice, audible over the phone, suddenly stopped. I was tense.
Aren't you ashamed to be a mother? Telling your daughter to come back just for money? That's ridiculous. What do you think Madison is? You are none of your business. Madison is my daughter. Give her back. Who was it that left your daughter in front of a facility? Don't talk so high and mighty. I'll tell the police. Say that she was kidnapped. Go ahead, say it. We have evidence of the terrible things you've done to Madison. Actually, please tell the police. It might solve things quicker. What did you say?
Listening to the argument between my aunt and Mom, I felt a bit down, like I was causing trouble. Then, my uncle, who had returned at some point, patted my head from behind.
It's okay. Leave it to us. It's time for the adults to step in.
Saying that, he took my hand and made hot milk again.
Madison likes hot milk, right? You drink quite a lot of it.
Yeah.
I thought it was delicious the first time I tried it. That's why I like it.
Hearing this, my uncle smiled happily. After a while, my aunt came back to the living room. Seeing my worried look, she awkwardly patted my head.
What's with that face?
Don't worry. She's no match for me. While fixing my hair.
Thank you,
I said to her. Then I helped with dinner preparation. I never knew helping out could be so enjoyable until I came to my aunt and uncle's house. A few days later, when the phone rang, it was Mom again. Even though my aunt and uncle told me not to answer the phone anymore, I wanted to help them in some way.
Madison? Mom is really in trouble. I need your help. Like I said before, I don't have a mom. Well, what an ungrateful child. Weren't you raised by Mom? Have you forgotten the happy days spent with Dad and me?
The mention of Dad surprised and irritated me.
I had fun when Dad was with me. But the kind one was only Dad. Mom abandoned me.
I was surprised at how loud my voice was when I spoke up. Then I felt my mood clearing. From then on, I talked back to everything she said.
Are you even my child? I didn't abandon you. I just left you there. You said, kids are a nuisance, so go to the facility. You said it while laughing. Such a person is not a mom. I was forced to say that. It's not my fault. Still, I was abandoned. So I don't have a mom. If I have a mom, it's Abigail. Dad is Timothy and my deceased dad. Are you brainwashed? Stop talking nonsense and come back quickly.
Before I knew it, I was arguing with Mom while crying. But strangely, I felt lighter, as if I had been holding back a lot until now.
At least, let me live in the house you're staying in. I can't even eat if things stay like this.
No.
Don't bother the people I love.
Suddenly feeling someone's presence, I turned around to see my aunt and uncle standing there. My aunt patted my head.
Well said.
My uncle nodded, almost crying. Then my aunt took over the phone, talking to Mom. She seemed strangely happy. According to my uncle, he was happy to hear my words.
I'm glad to be called Dad.
He also said to me. It was something I said on my own, but if they're happy, maybe it's okay to think that way? I felt happy too. After that, there were no more calls from Mom for a while. Probably thanks to my aunt and uncle. Since I started living with them, they bought me a mobile phone. I was so excited to have my first mobile phone, and I exchanged contact information with friends who had phones, enjoying more than ever before. On a day of continued peace, the house phone, unusually, rang. Since the incident with Mom, the school had started contacting my aunt or uncle's mobile phones, and I had been given a mobile phone, so calls from friends came to my mobile. Wondering who it could be, I answered hesitantly. Hello. Contrary to my high spirits, the person on the other end sounded very down. Hello, it's me. At first, I didn't recognize who it was and thought it might be a wrong number. I had been told at school not to talk to strangers, so I was about to hang up. It's Mom. You've forgotten my voice? Ah. Upon hearing this, I listened carefully. And indeed, it was Mom's voice, but so lacking in energy that I had not recognized it. You're already in 6th grade, aren't you? There's no one else here right now. Saying that made Mom start to cry. I was stuck, not knowing what to do. Actually, I'm in the hospital. I've fallen ill. What? Hearing about her being sick and in the hospital made me think of Dad. Now, recalling him doesn't make me sad. Rather, I feel energized by the good memories he left me. No one is here to take care of me. Could you come and take care of Mom? And the hospital bills are piling up. I can't pay them. Can you ask Abigail for me?
Say something, will you?
Why should I, a stranger, take care of you?
What? I refuse to pay for the hospital bills. And I won't tell Abigail. Don't get cheeky with me. Don't get too big for your britches.
She sounded too energetic for a sick person. Hearing about Mom being ill didn't shake me like it did when Dad was sick. My feelings for her had truly cooled off inside me. No matter what she said, I no longer felt fear. I didn't want to complain or say anything. Just felt sorry for her. I vowed never to become like her, even when I grow up. I was surprised at how coldly I could respond.
I've been given a mobile phone. And we hardly use the house phone anymore, so it's likely going to be disconnected. So this is really goodbye.
Hearing this, Mom panicked.
Don't say that. Please? Oh, then give me your mobile number.
That's impossible.
There's really no one to take care of me. No one to help with money. Then I'll contact someone who seems like they could help.
Mom seemed a bit mistaken by my words, sounding slightly hopeful. Hearing her hopeful voice made me sigh. I asked for the name of the hospital and hung up. Then immediately contacted my aunt. I told her about the conversation, and she worried about me but praised me for handling it well. When I made a request, she agreed and quickly contacted someone. Just as I told Mom, someone who might take care of her. A few days later, I noticed the house phone ringing persistently. It was probably Mom, I thought, and I didn't answer. It continued until night, even when my aunt and uncle came home. when I mentioned the constant ringing. My aunt sighed and answered the phone. Sure enough, it was Mom, and my aunt ended up in a battle with her. Mom kept demanding to talk to me, and my aunt refused. Mom's voice, overheard through the phone.
I didn't hear that my brother was coming. Why did you call him?
She sounded panicked that her own brother had shown up. The person I asked to contact my aunt was Mom's brother. I had remembered hearing before that Mom greatly disliked her brother. He was described as very stubborn, a person of deep loyalty and sentiment. Therefore, her affair was something that couldn't be tolerated. Her brother, having heard about it from my aunt, seemed furious and said he would come to pick her up immediately. Their sibling reunion after several years turned out to be a disaster. That seemed to have directed her anger towards us. My aunt, who had been battling with Mom, was unusually replaced by my uncle, who said, "Let me handle this." He is usually very kind, so I wondered if he could handle Mom, but as soon as he took over, his expression became fierce.
He's scarier than me when he gets angry.
My aunt whispered to me.
Hey, cut it out. If you're so eager to talk, I'll tell you. I'll make you apologize in front of Madison. Sick or not, it doesn't matter. Be ready.
My uncle yelled, and then apparently Mom hung up the phone. She hung up. After the call, my uncle was his usual self, laughing. It seems true that people who rarely get angry can be frightening when they do. After that, Mom was forcibly taken to her brother's house. It turned out that her illness was something that could be cured quickly, and she was able to leave the hospital soon. Mom, who had planned a lavish life with her affair partner, was taken to her brother's farm and had to help with farm work while living there. She initially resisted the farm work, but under her brother's pressure, she begrudgingly worked. Of course, she couldn't afford to buy luxury brands anymore and had to use second-hand clothes given by the villagers. As for me, it seems that all the paperwork was completed, and I was able to become the child of my aunt and uncle. They threw a celebration party for me, and I laughed more than ever before. And surprisingly, I found out that next year I would have a little brother or sister, which made me very happy. I resolved to cherish my family. From the bottom of my heart, that's what I think.